Welcome to the Adventurous Nerd podcast. I'm Alicia Joy, and this is episode 3. In today's podcast, I'm sharing about my nomadism. So each episode is either about travel or books or both. This time I want to talk about some things I actually hate about being a digital nomad. I've been a digital nomad now for years, and I've been a nomad, then I stop and stay stationary. And then I go again and be a nomad for a few years. And I do that kind of rinse and repeat, depending upon how I feel. But while I'm nomading, there are definitely some things about the lifestyle that I do not like. There's a lot that I do like, and I will record another podcast episode about things I like. But what inspired me was the other day I was scrolling through YouTube, as we all do, and I stumbled upon a video by Minority Nomad. I'll put a link to the video actually in the show notes for this podcast. And I will probably put this podcast on YouTube as well. And then I'll put a link for Minority Nomad's, his video about I think his was 5 things that he hates about being a digital nomad. I'll put a link to that in the description. His things, I can definitely relate to a lot of them, but there are some things that I really cannot stand, and I wanted to share them with you, but not just to talk about things I don't like or to complain, but to give you some actual tips. So for each one of these that I share, I'm going to share some of the workarounds, some things that I've come across over the years that they do help me, so that each of these things isn't as bad as they could be. So let's get to it. Numero uno. I'm in Mexico right now, so I don't know. I feel like throwing in some Spanish here and there. But anyway, number 1, the first thing, and these aren't necessarily in order of importance, I guess, but this one really does irk me. It is research. So as a nomad, your life will be consumed with research, depending upon how much you actually bounce around. So I do try to travel slowly or slow travel. I stay in places for longer, 90 days, 6 months, 1 year, depending upon how long I'm allowed to stay in the country or if I file an extension, how much I like the place. Some places I've stayed for very long, for a year and a half, 9 months. I mean, it just depends. But then there's other places I've been to where I'm there for a month or 30 days, 6 or 90 days. But I do try, if I can, to stay longer, because that minimizes the amount of research that you have to do. Because before you go to a place, you have to do a ton of research, or I prefer to do a ton of research, because when I get to a place, I like to be as set up as I can be. And so that research will include some of the big things like accommodation, where are the best towns within that city, or the best areas within that city that you're going to, within that country. Even figuring out which cities are kind of the best, where I'll get my cell phone SIM. That way I use the Wi-Fi or the data, the mobile data in that country. So anyway, SIM phone service, accommodation, places like cafes, co-working spaces, all those types of things. Because it's amazing all the things that you take for granted when you live in a place, that you know all of these things. And then when you go to a new place, it's like, okay, how do I get around? Things like Uber, so a lot of countries have an alternative Uber, or even within a country, some places will have, I was in Oaxaca the other day, and they had Didi, which is an app like Uber, where you arrange a cab to come and pick you up and take you someplace, and it tells you, where they are, how much it's going to cost. But then from Oaxaca, I'm now in San Cristobal, and they have a different app. They don't use Didi here. So even within a country, there's different apps for things like this. So all these little details. And that research does take a ton of time, I find, and it can be really draining and time-consuming and energy-consuming. It's exciting on one hand, but I think once you live a nomad life, it's not like when you're going on vacation, it's way more exciting than when you're actually a nomad and you've got work to do and other things to do. The research can just take a lot of time. So something that I found that really helps me is joining groups. If you are on Facebook, that's one of the advantages of Facebook. I don't love Facebook, but for the purposes of research, it's spectacular. There are tons of groups, and more than likely the place that you are looking to go to, there's a group for that place. So if you're thinking of going to, let's say Barcelona, for example, you can search Facebook for expats in Barcelona, digital nomads in Barcelona, foreigners in Barcelona. And I'm sure that there's like multiple groups, and I join pretty much all of them. Doesn't matter whether you identify with the word expat or digital. Get that out of your head. You just need to use this for the purpose of your research, connecting with people. You can already make friends. You can already find out when there's going to be meetups and things that are happening. People share restaurants, accommodation, all different good tips. So join groups before you go on Facebook. I find that highly useful. And just to kind of plug into a network. So before you go, you've probably already made a couple of like virtual friends, and then you can meet up with them in person. So that was number one. Number two, Wi-Fi and your attachment to Wi-Fi. So some people talk about this nomad lifestyle, and they talk about it like you're free. You're free to go where you want to go. I don't know. I don't think this is freedom. Everybody has a different definition of freedom, but I say it's not freedom because you are attached to Wi-Fi. You cannot go where you do not have Wi-Fi. As a digital nomad, you earn your living from your laptop. And in order to do that, you need Wi-Fi. No matter what it is that you do, at some point you need Wi-Fi. You need good Wi-Fi, strong Wi-Fi, consistent Wi-Fi. And this can be a really big headache, actually. I cannot tell you the places that I've worked from. I've had to like go into pubs, bars. Even speaking of Barcelona, years ago, that happened to me. I was staying in an Airbnb. Of course, the landlord promised strong Wi-Fi. When I got to the Airbnb, the Wi-Fi was not working well at all. And I searched and searched for good Wi-Fi. Usually you can find things like Starbucks, even if you don't like the brand, but you need to get work done. Starbucks is in a lot of countries of the world. You can go into a Starbucks and use the Wi-Fi for an amount of time. Nowadays, when Barcelona, that was maybe 6-7 years ago. So there weren't half as many co-working spaces and cafes that are really hip and open to people coming in with their laptops. It's different now. So it's not as much of a problem, but Wi-Fi. And going back to our research ahead of time, you can research the places based upon where it has strong Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, some parts of the world, the Wi-Fi just struggles, and you don't get fast Wi-Fi. Of course, things are changing a lot. Things change every day. Technology changes. But one thing that you can do also is when you get to a place, if you're staying in a hotel, hostel, Airbnb, or whatever, while you search for an apartment to stay longer, when you visit apartments, you can actually do a speed test. So you can go see the apartment, and while you are there, ask the landlord or the manager, whoever's showing you the place, for the Wi-Fi, jump on the Wi-Fi on your phone, and then use one of the websites like speedtest.net, or there's plenty of different websites. And then it will actually run a speed test to tell you how fast the Wi-Fi is. Now, oftentimes your phone is different than your laptop. So if you really want to do your due diligence, you can walk around with your laptop. I don't do that, but you can walk around with your laptop and then actually log in on your laptop and do a speed test. That's an excellent idea as well. So that's just one way of kind of getting around that potential headache, because it can be a headache. Wi-Fi, consistent, strong, fast Wi-Fi. Number 3, balancing seeing a place and doing your work. So as a nomad who works from your laptop, whether it's you do remote work for a company or you're like myself and you're independent, you work for yourself, you will typically work hard, especially if you do work for yourself. You work a lot. I haven't reached that stage of the 4-hour work week. Tim Ferriss wrote a book called The 4-Hour Work Week, if you've never heard of it. And I also don't necessarily want to reach the 4-hour work week, because I actually do like what I do, but I do work a lot. And there's ways to get, arrange your work better and to outsource, and there's all different tips and tricks. I do meet people on the road who don't work much. Kudos to them. I'm still at the stage where I find I put in a lot of hours. So when you get to you land in Bali, or you get to Bali, it's beautiful. You don't want to be at your laptop. Or you're in like a place like Canggu and everybody's going to the beach. And if you love the beach, there you are like, nope, I got work to do. So this is where you have to try to balance your work and balance seeing that new location, because you are not on vacation. You cannot spend all of your time just wandering around sites because you will be broke. You will not earn the money that you need to earn. So you have to find a way to balance partying and meetups and going to see places. All those things are good, but again, you got to find a way to balance. And for me, what I do is I try to create a routine. So once I'm settled in a place, after the initial, say, week or two, I try to have a routine that I stick with for my work. And it's the same routine no matter where I am in the world, certain times that I wake up, things that I do throughout my day, whether certain days are client days. One day a week, I do admin day for my business, which is like the not so fun stuff, but it has to be done. But everybody, you got to find your own schedule. But I do find having some type of routine helps me, because then I do have a set day of the week and some set hours where I know I am just free to explore and to just see places, meet with people without any feeling of guilt or worry, like, oh, I really should be working right now. So, number 4, high hopes and expectations, or disappointments, I should say. High hopes versus disappointment. So you'll hear people rave about a location. Oh my God, it's so fantastic. And then you'll get there and you're like, it's okay. Or you get there and you're like, I really absolutely cannot stand this place. This is normal for life though, right? Everybody has different opinions. And some people will rave about a place and it's just not your vibe for whatever reason. And sometimes you've spent a lot of money to get to that location and you had really high hopes. So that disappointment feels really heartbreaking. But I've learned over the years to just kind of balance my expectations and to not have these ridiculous expectations, because you just don't know until you actually get to a place, because again, we are all different. And another thing I do is I just kind of try to make the best of it. No matter where I am, I just refocus and think, well, what is it? There have to be things about a place that you like. There are always some aspects of every place that you're going to enjoy. So I try to refocus, and that helps me balance or deal with that high hopes and the disappointment, because that does happen every once in a while. Okay, number 5, legality and logistics. So you cannot just roll up in a people's place and stay indefinitely. You have to be considerate of all kinds of things, like visas and the amount of time that you're allowed to be there. And some people do all different things, like visa runs. Some countries allow, you go outside and then you come right back. People do different things. I've met many people who've overstayed visas. I just met a guy. I was in Mexico City and I met a guy who was in Brazil, and he had overstayed his visa in Brazil by like a month. And he's now trying to figure out how to get back and what he'll have to do. I think he has to pay a fine. That's his business. Everybody's different. Some places, I guess, if you really love it that much, or you can't figure out how to extend. But these are all things that you have to consider before you go to a place, while you're in a place, your visas. Another thing, like the logistics around your taxes and your home residency. Where are you a resident of? So for some countries, it's a little bit more complicated or different. Like the United States, if you are a US person, you are still liable to either pay taxes, or there is still something that you have to file even if you're no longer residing in the United States. Only the United States and Eritrea, the country in Africa, those are the only 2 countries in the world that are like this. But if you're a United States citizen and you're listening to this, this is something to be aware of. So you need to figure out your tax situation. Where are you claiming to be a resident? Are you staying in a place so long that you need to file taxes in that place if you become a resident of that place? All these things. Now, there are people, fortunately, who this is their expertise nowadays. You can find accountants and you can find attorneys almost all over the world who have some knowledge of this. And it's good if you can find someone who helps nomads in particular, or somebody who helps people from wherever you're from, wherever you hold citizenship and claim residency. Because that person has the specific details that will usually be good for you. Again, this is the value of joining groups, Facebook groups or co-working spaces whenever you go places, because usually there'll be people there who can refer you to someone if you need the help to figure out these things, so that you make sure that you stay legal and that your logistics, you're handling them well, right? But that is, it's a headache. It can be a bit of a headache. Number 6. building and maintaining strong bonds with people. When you're in and out of a place, it can be tricky because to build those strong relationships, I don't need to go into this for long because that's pretty obvious. But number one thing that I do for this is to just make sure I keep in touch with people. People who I know from home, but I've got multiple like multiple places that I call home. But I keep in touch with the people who I've got strong connections with. And even new people who I meet who I feel I bond with, sometimes they happen to be flying out in a week, or you happen to be leaving in a couple of days or whatever, or a month. But then just keep in touch. Just make that effort. Somebody has to make an effort, and hopefully it's two people, but make an effort to keep in touch with people who you've already built relationships with. Number 7, a thing that I cannot stand is witnessing the bubble. So a lot of times, especially nomads who are from Western countries, tend to only interact amongst each other, and this may sound like a harsh criticism, but it is kind of aggravating to me. They don't have any interest in learning the local language, knowing about local people, customs, history. They don't really want to get deep with it. They only want to hang around their own little bubble. And it's almost sometimes ends up being like a colonizer type of bubble. And there are certain locations I've been to where that colonizer bubble is really strong. And honestly, I just usually leave those locations because I'm not interested in being a part of that. So, I mean, everybody's different though. Maybe it'll look you, maybe you don't care. Maybe you want to be in a bubble of expats and nomads. And I mean, do your thing. It's just not necessarily my thing. I do like plugging into networks. Like I say, those can be a bubble. But then in addition to that, I do try to make an effort to learn some language, meet some people, and not just totally be in that little bubble. So those are the 7 things. 7 things I hate about being a digital nomad. Oh, hate is such a strong word. I guess I could just say things that kind of irk me or bother me, irritate me sometimes about. They're the not so good side. And there's many other things that also that can be aggravating. But these are probably my most top 7 things that I can think of right off the top of my head. So if you are a nomad and you're watching this on YouTube, or you're listening to this on my site on adventurousnerd.com, please drop a comment. Let me know what you hate about being a nomad. Or if you're thinking about becoming a nomad and you've got questions, please feel free to leave any questions that you have. I do try to check back and answer comments or questions. If I can help, I sure will. This is Alicia Joy. I thank you for your time and thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful for you.